Good evening, brothers and sisters. It's my pleasure to be here with you again this evening. We have a great program. We're going to be talking about a subject that is really dear to my heart, in that it is the foundation for building family, male-female relationships. I should say, in this case, black male-female relationship, because without um, without a strong bond, you can't have a strong family. And so we have a great panel. In fact, I'm going to ask the panel to introduce themselves, and we'll start with um, brother every day. Okay, give us your name and tell us a little about yourself. Try to keep it.
Yes, sir. Real brief. My name is Tone,
Okay.
and everything from there is pretty much I'm self-taught. I do my study, I do my reading. I believe we all could be in the same position in the sense of truly doing our due diligence, learning, actually reaching out to build community with each other. That's my mission. That's my goal. That's what I like to put out to the world. And that's what I hope comes back to me. Family building, everybody actually learning, understanding that we don't have to wait for someone to come and teach us and pick us up. We can go and learn ourselves and chase what we want. And thank you for allowing me to introduce myself. That's all.
Okay. All right, Sister Davina.
Hi, my name's Davina.
Hi.
I'm from the UK, and I run a business called Bliss Butterflies, where I encourage women to get back into dating and to nurture relationships with men. I also have a platform called Black Girls Dine, which is for networking for Black women, and Black Girls Network, where I promote the businesses of other Black women. So I'm very much about promoting ourselves, promoting each other, and just building our community. But I'm really focused on the Black love and Black relationships.
Let me interrupt. I want to ask, can everybody hear Sister Davina?
Yes, I hear her.
Yes, I hear her.
British
Yes,
accent.
I was
Darrell?
able to hear it also.
Darrell, can you hear Sister Davina? Okay. I'm going to go to Joshua, ask you to introduce yourself, and we'll see if everybody can hear you.
Greetings,
Josh.
family. Yeah, I did hear Sister Davina while she was speaking. So yeah, my
Okay,
name is
wonderful.
Joshua Sarah. I'm a communications artist and a spiritual technologist. I definitely had to make up my own words because English in America didn't have categories for what me and my people do. So I use language arts, whether that's written or spoken, to build bridges between my people so we can communicate, because a lot of times we're just having communication problems. It's not so much that we disagree. A lot of times we're agreeing in different language and we think we're disagreeing. So, I just spend time creating spaces for us to have communication and for it to be safe spaces. And I also work on my mathematics as a contribution for my people. So I've written 3 books of math so far in a series of 10, and I teach children and tutor children on math with a nature orientation. So I'm teaching them how to read math like they read letters and understand those are words, and they can visualize the words and see a whole story. But when it comes to math, they can't see the story. So it's because they're not being taught like that, how to actually read it and see it all around them, in them. And that's what it is, the mathematics.
Okay, brother. So Rod, thank you so much. We're going to ask Sister Evandra if she will tell us a little bit about herself and introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Evandra Catherine. I believe a lot of the viewers are familiar with me. I consider myself a public intellectual, a spiritual conduit, almost similar to Joshua Sarah. It's interesting, Joshua, that you said what you said, because recently one of my colleagues said, teachers say that Black children can't read, but they read the world every day. And so what you said just made that the affirmation to what she said, and that we have to stop saying that our children can't read, because the written text is only one form of reading, but there are other forms of reading. So thank you for that. And that's my introduction.
Okay, thank you very much. Brother Charles.
Peace, family. My name is, most folks in the community know me as Brother Charles. I just recently revealed the other name that I've had personally for years, Asukili, which means the Lord has blessed me. Most folks know me from my association with the elders in the New York area, but I'm also a member of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee and the Sons of Africa. And peace to everyone that's out there tonight. I pray that what we say today will bring some clarity to your minds, that open up your hearts to each other, brothers to brothers, brothers to sisters, and sisters to sisters, because we need to build this Black family, this African family, for peace.
Okay, thank you, Brother Charles. As I said, our topic for today is looking at Black male-female relationships. How do we strengthen it? First of all, we want to look at what has caused the problems that we have in the Black male-female relationship, because we need to build a strong family. If we don't have a strong family and a good relationship between males and females in our community, then the subject, the saying that we have, take a whole community to raise a child. It all starts at home, and that means that the relationship between Black males and females, we need to strengthen it in every way we can. So we're going to look at what is the tension in the race. We don't want to over focus on it, but at the same time, we want to strengthen it. So anybody can kind of jump in, and we'll pull you up and focus on what you have to say, and we can move from one to the other. So who would like to start out? Okay.
All right. Nobody starts, so I'll start. So one of the first things, I think the last time you had a session, our sister Mama Hadassah said that we are living like chocolate covered white people. And I very much agree with what she said in that sentiment. Of course, enslavement, the process of enslavement, and the white enslavement, the European enslavement, and the Arab enslavement rather, that preceded it, is certainly an issue in our community. But one of the greatest things was taking us out of our true nature and taking us away from nature, especially those of us that are in the urban areas. And we see that the problems are exacerbated more so in the urban areas. But whenever Black people are a natural people, we have a connection to nature. And when you take away our connection to nature, you confuse everything else. Nature shows us that male is supposed to be with female. Nature shows us that groups within whatever species it is work together to survive. Nature shows us that the males in the species have a certain role, and the females in the species, a certain species, have a certain role. But when you took us out of nature, that was one of the greatest crimes and the greatest causes of confusion for us. And I think one of the best things we could do is what Brother Joshua does when he tries to explain math to our young people. Show them how math works in nature. Show them how life is supposed to be lived. Get us back our reconnection with nature, and I think that will begin some of the healing process.
Okay, thank you. Joshua, since he mentioned you, give us your insight.
About the disconnect?
Yes.
Well, the basic disconnect that I've seen is that we have been violated in our most vulnerable, sensitive ways and have never done the rituals to heal with each other. I mean, just to make a graphic nutshell to let your DNA trigger what I'm talking about. If we know some of these plantation stories of somebody coming in, snatching our wife or daughter, and to take them off to do something that we don't want to do, right? And then they have to come back and lay in the bed with us, And for me as a black man, right? I'm a black man holding on to whatever sense of dignity and sense of self that I have. And part of my life is that every now and then, whenever he feels like it, this guy gets to come and take my wife and rape her up for me, and then send her back to my bed. We haven't done the healing work from that. We haven't done the healing work. And so what happens is all of the shame, all of the hurt, all of the disgust, all of the pain that we're feeling individually and we're feeling collectively, we are not able to process it with each other and attach to each other, because now it's kind of driving us away from each other. We feel so much shame, it's hard to even want to look at the other person. And it's not that we don't want to reach out and embrace and love, but we feel ashamed. We feel less than. We don't feel worthy. And so we pull back when what we should be doing is reaching in, but we don't know how to, because it's this whole new psychotic space that we're living in. Mm-hmm. And we have never found the ways to process that. And so all of the anger that we should have at the person who did the thing, and we should both go jump on him, we end up jumping on each other. That's right. Because we haven't processed that. So, okay, let me say this. I'm a poet. So I'm going to say something so you can understand me in a poetic way, right? I often tell people when they ask me on a basic level, when my sisters are asking me what they can do with a black man, and they feel like they want to get him activated. They feel like he's not activated, right? They see his potential. They just want him to step up and do X, Y, Z. And what I've realized is that we have the wrong expectations of each other. Sometimes I call it fantasy disease, right? And so I'm saying that we are raised without examples, without initiation, without education about our natural relationship to each other. We're raised watching everything telling us to go away from each other and to hate each other and not to trust each other, and giving us all the reasons why. And so by the time we look at what the media is telling us what is good for us, it's usually not us. It's some other person's culture. And so then when we look back at us, the people we want to be with, we want the person we want to fulfill that role, and it's not their place. So if we're expecting each other to fill the roles of another culture, we are living in complete insanity. And so I often tell sisters, what you got to do for a man is ask him to do something that's going to activate his African soul, his indigenous, spiritual, godly soul, not ask him to go get a job or put in an application or work harder to get a what do they call it? Promotion for the person that just raped you and me and sold our children. I don't want to work with that person. So, I can only speak from a black man's perspective on certain things, but I'm just saying to sisters, like, if you want to activate a black man, you should get in his ear about doing stuff like that. That's going to actually make him push back at our genetic pain, our genetic problem. Not just we need to pay these bills. Before we even care about these bills, we need to care about the genetic problems that's going to keep cropping up in every generation. So I think that's where we're really at, is just dealing with that, the vulnerability that was violated in front of us, and we should have had each other's back, and we couldn't because it was so chaotic and hectic. So now we need to come together and really realize that my pain is your pain, and your pain is my pain. It ain't who's more hurt. It's we got the same pain.
That's right.
I agree extremely. If no one else would like to put in, I would like to take a stab at it.
No, okay, all right. Well, let me get the sisters. I've had
yes, sir.
two brothers, Evandra. Do you think
Davina can go ahead and go?
Okay, thank you. I would agree with a few things you said. So the comment about nature, getting back to what the natural order of things are. If you look at other races, other cultures, people go with their own, right? They know where they stand, they know what they're supposed to do. You build your own race, you build your own culture. And we need to, I think we are getting there, pull together as a people and in relationships and support one another. The other leg to that, I would say that I find the problem being is this, what feminism has become. And it seems to be causing a rift between Black men and Black women, because we have some of our sisters who believe that feminism is a hatred of men. And that is then pushing them away from the Black man rather than realizing it's a separate agenda. There's an agenda by other races, by white people, to separate us. And the whole idea of this feminism of pitching women against men is not for our benefit. And I think there's just a lot of ignorance around that. And that's a problem with the friction between Black men and Black women at the moment. And understanding that women have a place, men have a place, and together it's a partnership. It's something we have to educate ourselves about and learn how to work together, how to love one another, and to know that there's a place. In the natural order of things in nature, the male is the leader. That doesn't put the woman at a disadvantage or in a subordinate position, but you have in any kind of relationship or situation, whether it's the workplace, at home, in families, there's always going to be a leader and someone to respect that leader, which then breeds mutual respect. And once we grasp that, understand that, educate ourselves on that, we will relieve ourselves of this friction, I believe.
Very much.
Yeah. I would like to jump in and just piggyback off of Davina, just to say.
But let me ask you a question, Sister Evandra.
Sure.
This topic, because a lot of people say, to focus on it makes it worse. I mean, that's stuff when you start talking about slavery and the white man having access and owning the Black woman. That's not a good thing to focus on. I wanted to get your opinion on the topic in terms of, is it something that we need to deal with? Do you see it as something that's urgent and that's critical, that we need to talk about it and get a deeper, better understanding on what it is? Why is it there? And what do we have to do to make our situation better? Please go ahead.
So, thank you. So before you can have any conversation, you have to have some kind of start in place. And history is always a good place to start to get an understanding of where we are. So I do think that we need to talk about this, and we need to begin at the beginning of it all. But in that same beginning, we have never allowed the Black man to know that he can be loved and that the Black man is a loved individual. Joshua was speaking about how the white man could come and take the Black woman and lay with her and send her back. And this, regardless of how traumatic that is or how problematic that was, there was a sense of love shown to Black women all throughout history. Might not have been the best kind of love, might not have been the right love, but there was a sense of some type of love. The Black man never received or was never shown a sense of love. And so oftentimes when there is a woman that wants to show a Black male love, he can't seem to interpret what it is that she is sharing with him and showing him and expressing to him. And I find oftentimes that there is sometimes a disconnect between a Black woman trying to love a Black man genuinely and him being open to receiving love, and not just romantic love, but love in general, love from his mother. I think Michelle Obama said Black mothers raise their sons and love their daughters. And that is where that essence come from. And if we could find a way as Black women, particularly I can speak for us, we have to have the ability to recognize and understand that Black men may not be I don't want to overgeneralize, may not be receiving the type of love that we're given, and be patient with that love and allow them to understand it, allow them to comprehend it. And also to, like Joshua said, allow it to activate them at the same time When I first met my husband, I did exactly what Joshua said. I didn't care what your income was going to come from, what job you were going to have, but what is it that you want to do? Like I said, there was potential, but they wasn't reaching that potential. I believed in him more than he believed in himself. So in short, to answer you, Clemson, yes, we need to talk about it. Yes, we need to start at the beginning, but there are different parts of the beginnings that we can start at. And the place that I just started from was just a sense of just being shown love.
Clemson, you there?
I'm here.
On mute. I think he's freezing up there. I think you were freezing up for a little bit.
Said it again.
I said, I think you were freezing up for a little bit.
Okay. Can everybody? Yeah. Can everybody see and hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very good. So everybody can see and hear me.
Yes.
No, just say yes. So
yes.
I know what's going on. Okay. Very good. I'm black all the time.
Clemson, before you jump into the next thing, I think it's important that we really go over what was just, there's a lot was just unpacked, right? Because that healing piece is a big piece healing, because we're not, Clemson, we're not just dealing with our individual need for healing. We're dealing with a familial need for healing, and we're dealing with a collective African people's need for healing. And when Brother Joshua talked about the black woman, the master being a quote unquote master, that European being able to come and take the woman out of the bed, they didn't just take the women out the bed. They took the men out the bed. They took the men out the bed. They took the little boys out the bed. They took the little girls out the bed. They made black men have sex with their aunties and their sisters and their mothers. Can you imagine that trauma? That's the healing that we need to deal with.
How much of that trauma do you think has a residue in our relationship today?
That trauma has everything to do with our relationships today. Our young girls now becoming more masculine, for instance, because they're not being defended by black people, by their own fathers, who probably most of the time, unfortunately these days, not there, by their own mothers, who will blame them for trying to seduce their lecherous boyfriends or husbands or whatever, the guy that they're seeing. They blame the daughters for their own molestation. They blame the daughters for their own molestation, Clemson. What is a young lady to do with that? How was she supposed to act? How was she supposed to feel about her mother and herself? I mean, I told the story when I used to work at a program at Harlem Hospital, and this was the first session I was going out to facilitate at one of the community centers. And I'm working with our student leaders who are like peer educators. And one of the student leaders says to my coworker, Miss T, that's the girl I was talking to you about as a girl. She was about 12 or 13 passes by. And she was dressed kind of promiscuously. And, she was kind of loud, like sometimes our Harlem girls are. And so I asked them, what exactly are you talking about? So this young 13-year-old girl was suspended from her school because she had oral relationships with all the young men in the junior varsity team. And so they didn't say, well, what's going on with her, that she's being promiscuous, that she's being sexually aggressive. They didn't lambast the little young boys or punish them. They only punished her. And I went in 2 or 3 schools rather, and with similar incidents with a young lady, not even 12, young lady like 8, 9 years old, in a stairwell with a group of multiple boys engaging in the same kind of behavior. And they always punish the little girls, and they don't punish the boys. See, that's what our young ladies are dealing with when you see them going into bisexuality and lesbianism and just and being in gangs and whatnot. That's what they're dealing with. That's the trauma that they're dealing with. And a lot of times it's generational stuff that's happened, because not only they was molested, but their mothers were molested and their grandmothers were molested. And that's why the ladies are not showing, the mothers are not showing their daughters love, because nobody was there to show them the love that they needed. And so, and for the first time in my lifetime, I'm seeing a lot of young ladies that don't have the mother love. My sister was talking about the saying where they say mothers love their sons and raise their daughters. Meaning, what that saying used to mean is the mothers taught the daughters, or had expectations for the daughters and taught them how to take care of the house, but they just gave their sons love and didn't prepare them. And so now we have these little boys going because they're not prepared for life. The mothers weren't hard on them because maybe they feel sorry for them because the father wasn't in the picture or what have you. But now the saying is almost they're showing love, but they're not raising them. They're not even showing love. They're raising their daughters and they're not preparing them mentally and emotionally for life. And the sons are still kind of the same thing. They're not preparing sons the way that they should. Women are thinking that they can raise a man, but women cannot raise a man. They can show him love and how to be the example of a good woman, but they cannot raise a man to be a man. And that's probably one of the problems that we have, because when I was young, my generation is probably one of the first real generations of what you call single motherhood, where I was me and my sister were latchkey kids. These kids today, it's taken to a whole new level. My mother was a single mother, but she had the extended family. She had my grandmother, she had my uncles, she had my her friends, which is like my aunts, my cousins, and so forth. So she had a connection. This generation today is one of the realest generations that I've seen, where you say somebody's a single mother, they're a single mother, they out on their own. They're doing everything by themselves to try to make their family work and take care of their children. The men are not stepping up and taking responsibility as they should in a larger degree. Some are trying, but some sisters have blockages and they're pushing the men away. But a lot of sisters, like I said, are out here alone, and they really feel alone, and they don't even have the support of the grandmother. A lot of the grandmothers today are young, and they're saying, "I raised my children. You go raise your own children." Excuse the head doctor, but I'm just adding a little emphasis to it. So yeah, we have a lot of trauma, Clemson, that needs to be addressed, and we're going to move forward because it's not getting better; it's getting worse.
Okay, Sister Davina, can I get your insight
on the trauma on that? Yes, there is a lot of generational trauma. I think a lot of the things you just brought up there about abuse through generations and how that passes down is very true. If you've got hurt people raising hurt people, it's just going to get worse. Yeah, I've seen that, I've witnessed it, I've experienced it, I see that, but we have to be able to break the cycle. So we know better, we do know better now, and I think we're in an age where things like healing and alternative healing and therapy and all that is very normal, very accepted, and we should be taking advantage of it so that we can break that cycle and not pass it down to the next generation and not let it affect our relationships with the other sex, because we know better. We do know better. So yes, I think it's true that there are generational hurt, but I don't think it should be a reason to excuse the friction between us as Black men and women, because we can get the help and we know about it. We know what it is and we know how to fix it. So we need to do that healing work.
Thank you so much. Brother, I am Black every day.
So thank you. I did want to jump in earlier. I heard a mention of the European style, the way we have been living since we have been brought over here. since we have been introduced to their lifestyle, the misogynistic world that we live in. As Brother Charles was speaking about the young girls getting blamed for the, nonsense that men do at times. And we don't realize that where we come from, the woman was praised. She was put up on high. We showed so much love towards the woman. But in the European culture that we are currently living in and that we currently keep trying to assimilate into, it doesn't work that way. The woman is not treated properly. The woman is secondary. So we're still trying to do something that's not natural to us. It's not natural to us to treat the woman as secondary or treat the woman as she's less than, because that's not how we started in our African roots. If we go back, we know that we put the woman up there. And again, a lot of these things that happen stems from not caring about our women, not wanting to show love for our women. Now, and trust, I'm not trying to, avoid the trauma that we have had from slavery, but we are at a point in time where we know what happened during slavery. We can study that. We can learn that trauma. Once we learn that trauma, we also are to a point in time where we could go back and learn our natural African roots, or if you consider yourself Aboriginal, learn Aboriginal roots, get out of the European mindset and the European culture. Stop treating our women the same as European men treat their women. Again, someone mentioned the feminist movement, which is, I believe that was, I'm sorry, sister, I don't have your name right in front of me, but I know your face. I know your face. But she spoke on the feminist movement. Davina, thank you so much. Sister Davina spoke on the feminist movement, and that being that distraction. It's just a distraction. It's not for our Black sisters in the sense of, again, we're going through the same struggle. Me and you, queens and kings, we're going through a very similar struggle. The feminist movement and the way it's being used, it's not really being used properly for the Black women, in my opinion. It's spreading us further apart. So again, we have to get out of the European culture, get out of European mindset, the misogynistic style of living that we've been living in, get more towards understanding, putting the woman on high. Black men love their mothers. Some do, of course. We also got to show love to the queens that carry our children, our sisters, our aunties. It has to be spread around. And we're not, again, not to generalize. Some of us definitely are, but we're not moving as fast as we need to. I'll say it that way.
Can I throw a point of insertion in there? It's really quick point.
No, go ahead, please.
The conversation about the younger children, right? I have a son, and I'm nervous about something with my son. He's 10, and he's really touchy-feely, like really touchy-feely. And I wonder, right? I'm my first child, my only child. I wonder if me allowing him that safe space and telling him like when it's a little bit too far or whatever, if that is going to like help him like not do this with other women. And then I think about the young males that don't have their mother at home because she's always providing and caring. And like not Joshua, but Brother Charles said, she's a single woman doing everything. And I often wonder in these moments that we were talking about the young ladies and the young boys, when have young men or young women had an opportunity to get a level of closeness with a parent or a trusted caregiver without, one, them being taken advantage of, and two, having someone there to talk them through whatever those moments are for them. And then again, we as society will sexualize a parent-child relationship. Oh, someone kisses their child on the mouth. That's something that you shouldn't do. A child shouldn't sit on their father's lap and those sort of things. And so as we're having that conversation, it brings me to that place that I'm dealing with right now with my own child's touchy-feeliness and how to nurture that in a healthy way, but also share with him that you can only do that with your mom or like he's close to his grandmother. I don't know if anybody else on the panel can speak to that, or if you have children, or if any of the men have daughters. That's what I'm dealing with right now with my 10-year-old.
Well, I'm gonna speak to you, sis, because I'm of a certain age. I'm 52. I don't have any children, but I've raised my brother, and in raising my brother, I've interacted with a lot of young people, and plus I work in the school system. 10 years old is an age where they are curious about other. It's pure though. It's not like the dirty what we add to it, unless that's what they're exposed to. Young children are curious about their bodies, and boys would be curious about the lumps and shapes on women's bodies, and they are drawn to them, but it's not necessarily in what we quote unquote will call dirty. Most of the time, I don't know if you've ever noticed, a 2 or 3 year olds, they usually will like reach down in their diapers, or if their diapers are off, they'll touch themselves down there, and they don't mean anything by it. It's just like curiosity, getting to know your body. I think all of these things, like don't sit on a man's lap and all of this other stuff that people have, is because of the traumas that we've endured. I think now would be a good time for you, though, to teach him about respecting other people's space, meaning body-wise, and having other people respect his space, because a lot of times when with babysitters and such, they take advantage of young children, and children don't feel like they could say no, to being touched a certain way. So it would be a good time for you to teach him about having other people respect his space and respecting other people's space, as and what's appropriate, even though he might just be innocently, doing it. It would be.
Brother Charles, I'm concerned about the children who don't have the parent in the home to do what you're telling me to do, right? Like I know to do that, but when we talk about the young lady in the stairwell and the boys all in her face, and she, like that young lady may not have had the opportunity, those young men haven't, and how can we make sure that, to what you're saying, like those children are getting that level of guidance, because that does put some distance between the relationship between Black men and Black women when women feel over sexualized, or even we hypersexualize men, and it's never talked about. Oh, the gray sweatpants. I mean, I'm just saying, okay?
Yeah, you're right. But most of that stuff is learned behaviors, though.
Right. And I want to know, what can we do, like as a community, when we know children need these senses of touch and closeness and to feel their bodies, etc., but we don't have the mothers or the fathers or anyone in the home to allow it to happen. And then we're talking about misogynism. We're talking about, the promiscuity, etc., right? Like, it's these earlier, parts of the development that I think allow some of these things to occur. And then we, as chicks that dudes, get money. Like, I just want to, my vagina will pay my bills, right? Like, it's okay for that now, I don't know. I don't
want it's difficult. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
Sorry.
No worries.
No, I wanted you to speak on the subject, and then tell us a little bit about how the African woman historically was respected and how she was seen in her place in the universe.
That's to Joshua, to me?
That's to Joshua.
Oh, okay.
Joshua, can you touch on another point? Were you going to touch on another point first, and then can you answer Clemson?
Yep. I kind of wanted to touch back and then hit that and then bring it forward, right? Because when we were talking about the trauma that we've been through, I wanted to also point out that, as much as we've been through this hard trauma, it is also, there's always a power that comes out of it. It's hard to look at a benefit of having survived something, but I mean, every superpower hero movie is made off of somebody going through a tragedy and getting a superpower out of that. And so, I mean, just as an example, we talked about rape. What type of mentality, what type of meditative mind state have Black women been able to develop to be able to like tune out what's actually happening, to shift dimensions, to go into compartments and create different worlds? That's a real technique that, if used in a healthy way, is very valuable to us. So we have to be able to go in and look at what powers we got out of being able to survive, since we didn't die from it, since it was so insanely crazy that we couldn't even conceive it, and yet it didn't destroy us. We weren't prepared, and yet we figured out ways to get through this thing. Those are the things we need to make sure we maintain. And now that we have freedom, not still keep putting all of our powers into thinking about them and focusing on them, but actually like, all right, now we got a whole new power set that we didn't have when we got here. And now we got a little bit of breathing room. Let's take these powers. Let's really think about, what did we get out of this? What can we do now in a mental way, in an emotional way, physical way, all of that. So I think there is some different things we can look at in that process, instead of always looking at that as a painful, traumatic thing. It is also a transformative, initiatic kind of thing, like to go through a rites of passage or initiation. So then bringing it up to what we talking about with the children aren't getting rites of passages. They don't have communities that are reinforcing what we're saying. Okay, child, this is what reality, this is how you live, this is what you do. And then we send them out amongst people who don't have that. So it's like saying, okay, little rabbit, we're going to live in perfect harmony with all creatures in the world. Now go out there with them wolves whose parents don't tell them this and get along with them. Like, you setting them up for the okie doke. You know, unless you are arming them, unless you're really making them think about the fact that it is going to be dangerous for you out there. There's no avoiding that. But it's also our realm. So you have to equip them to know that they have the power, but they're going into a place full of people who feel like they should try your power at every given moment. And you have to know how to stand in your power. It's better when you have a community. When you listen, you can't do it without community. The question you're asking, Dr. Evandra, cannot be accomplished without community, right? Because of what I just said, you need to have other people where you can send your child and they can go play with other children with the same culture, with the same values, where it's not going to be a real touchy, I'm scared of you interacting with my child and what my child is going to pick up. No, y'all just go play and have fun and be children. And you're safe and protected, explore, learn, do all of that. Because Brother Charles is right. They are going to explore themselves and touch and figure out. They should. And they should also have adults around who know that and are giving them, parables and stories and myths that are setting their consciousness up for when they come into needing that. You can be like, now, you know how we talked about that story about how the little tadpole became a frog? You know what I mean? You give them some stories and then like, so what I was really trying to prepare you for is right now, your body is going through a change. See what I'm saying? So you have to prepare them as children to receive the higher knowledge. That's why we have mythology and parables and analogies, because it's like that. But to be able to come in, but to be able to do it without a community that's surrounding that, supporting that, was good, bro. It's not even possible. Not when you send them out to wolves that aren't getting that same. You see what I'm saying? It's just not possible. So, and then Brother Clemson, he was asking me about the depths, taking it back to how we looked at, the way of looking at Black women. And I was thinking earlier that we now put the story before the reality. Whereas before we knew the reality and we created stories based on reality. Now we know the stories, but we don't know the reality. And so I look at it in a mathematical way all the time. It never fails me. When we talking about relationships, it's positive and minus. That's how you get electricity. Nothing we have plugged up right now would work if we just had our plug laying on top of another plug. It's not coming on. You know what I mean? It's just gonna sit there and look at you like, you know what I want, you know what I need, so you get the plug, right? So I keep it in that real basic understanding of that's how you get power, is male and female. And I'm here for power, and our people have been here for power. So we know that connection of male and female. Now, if you look into the Kemetic story, they say Noon is the beginning, and Noon is characterized as feminine, but also Amen is there in Noon, you know what I mean, which is the masculine. But in a physical way, the only physical thing that we can say is a physical thing, we're saying is the mother, the material, the matter, the Noon. And so we're saying in this physical realm, it is the mother that is the physical realm that we inhabit to become a thing in the first place. The woman is the flesh, right? And the man is the spirit that's moving through the flesh. It's the chi, the ra, you know what I mean? It's the sperm that goes in. there's the flesh and then there's the sperm, right? The seed and the earth. You can't have one without the other and expect to get life. And so there was never this, like, sometimes people go too far and be like, and start putting women above men or men above women. But if you're on a sphere, there is no top or bottom, left or right. You are all equidistant from the center. Everybody is equal on a sphere. And that's where we're coming from, a spherical reality, not a two-dimensional, flat, vertical, horizontal. Nah, we're spherical, and thus we're all always valued. You have to have male and female. Now, they have different charge power. If you look at a tree trunk, we know how old a tree trunk is by the rings that come out of it, right? If you violate nature and just chop it down, you can count the rings, right? And the reason it has those rings is because in the spring, it expands, right? Everything is growing in the spring, and in the fall, it contracts. So every year it expands and contracts, expands and contracts. But listen, if it expanded and contracted the same amount in each season, it would never grow. If it took 2 steps expansion and 2 steps contraction, it would never grow. It would, by the end of the year, it would be back where it started. So it has to be actually imbalanced in order to be balanced, in order to grow. So it expands more and then contracts really hard, though. Every woman will tell you contractions are hard. So the contraction is shorter, but way more powerful. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes we think, well, there's more of this, so that's better. So it's understanding Ma'at balances everything out, and it doesn't mean 50-50. It might mean 75-25, but that 25 got the uppercut, and that 75 is just a jab. You know what I mean? So you got to jab a whole bunch of times. So it's just, you got to really understand how balance is. And so we have always known the power of woman, exactly what she is and how we need to honor that. The fact that we are borrowing her, to even walking around, I'm borrowing my mama. Like, my father shot me into this galaxy, and I went looking for some flesh to jump in before I expired. And I found my mama, like, hey, mama. And I jumped into some flesh, breathed my spirit into it, and now I'm walking around in my mama right. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's how we look at what a mother is and why we respect it, because she literally gave us a vessel to be in. Or else we would just be vibrations floating around. We would just be spirit energy, And
Thank you.
Spirits. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we have a new face, and that is Ama Akota. And we are very glad to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. Have you heard enough to understand what we are talking about? And maybe you'll tell our audience who you are and make a commentary if you would like.
For sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for hosting this space and allowing me to join. My apologies for the late arrival. I had some mishaps, but nonetheless, I'm here and grateful to be here amongst everyone who's talking on this subject, which is on union and the Black woman and the Black man. I jumped in while Joshua was speaking, and I resonate with some of the points he's made, especially around that there has to be imbalance for balance to occur. I heavily agree with that because I do know balancing is an act. It's a verb. It's something that needs to be in motion. If something is just still, it's even in the stillness. There's a balancing that's happening inside. There's an inertia that's creating this balance within. And so I definitely resonate with that. And he said something else that I kind of so bringing that topic to this day and age of how sometimes people want to put one person's like a male over the woman or the woman over the male, while not realizing that the comment that Joshua just made does not mean that one is more important than the other. Yeah, maybe in one season the male may be most important and the female may be most important, because that's what happens when a woman gives birth. That's the first stages of the child's birth. The child absolutely needs the mother, incredibly more so than it might seem that the father's presence is what you call it. It's It is needed. I don't want to say the father's presence isn't needed, but the mother's presence is literally what's giving this child all the nutrients. The father takes more of a back seat for the first couple of months, and then after that, the child can really sense the father, can see the father, and now starts to feel the spiritual connection to the father even more so, because it's their senses start to develop more, and the next person who's equally important in their life is their father, and so they start to really need their father. That's why some mothers get upset when the baby says dada first, like papa first. It's easier. What'd you say? Did someone say something? Okay, I'll be quick, but basically both essences are important, and that it, the balancing act, one becomes more important than the other in just one season, and then it goes back, it's fluctuating, so in a way it equals out at some point. And so the illusion of one being better than the other is a lie. And the reason why I'm bringing it back to current terms is there was a news article recently that males are trying to produce without females. And what they're trying to do is use the mitochondrial DNA from the male skin cell to perform as the woman, like in the reproductive act. And Joshua just speaking on how searching for the mom, it's like even in the using the male skin cell, you're using the part that is the female, which is the mitochondrial. Like, you know what I'm saying? So even there, you need a female. Because where would he have gotten that from, right? So it's just fascinating that the further people try to get away and seem like one is better than the other, or you don't need something else, this concept of I create my reality, they still reflected off of nature's beauty, nature's way of existence. And it's like, how could you even create these things if you didn't have a basis to even imagine it off? Even the internet is imagined off of our brain and still can't really get it together as much as they're trying to. But I kind of digress in that topic. I realized I didn't really say who I am per se, so I'll just do that real quick. I'm a Akata. Ama is my middle name. Akata is my given name, in the sense that Akata means wildcat and is often referred to Black Americans in the United States. And though I am Ghanaian, I'm also very much raised here in the Bronx, New York City. And I take on that name because there's a lot of connection that needs to happen. And I am a vessel to have those connective conversations occur. I am a singer, writer. I just finished writing a book. I published my first book. I am also an yoga instructor, so I teach yoga. The range of what I love to do is connect culture and wellness, and kind of put more depth into the concept of art, because I think art is just a empty term sometimes. I think culture is what makes something art. Even the word artifact is, I think, is a true word for art. But I digress. That's who I am. Thank you for having me. And, yeah. I can't hear you.
I wanted to bring up a topic that I think is very important, and that is if you, almost every time you cut the TV on now, you see relationships between Black women and white men. There are very few commercials that involve Black men and Black women in a healthy relationship. The focus seems to be that to get the mindset of Black women to look for white men as mates, as supports, and etc. I mean, it's the other way as well in getting white women to focus on Black men, but not nearly as much. And I think it's because white men see their ability to sustain their power and their existence through the Black woman. They need the melanin. They're dying out. It is the last statistics that I saw was that over 50% of children over 5 years old. Well, Black children outnumbered white children by a significant margin at 5 years old. Children who are at least 5 years old outnumber white children. And that's a part of this whole movement to exterminate Black people. I don't know how many of you saw the movie Exterminate All the Brutes, but it's well worth looking at to understand where we are and what is happening to us. But I would like for you to kind of speak on how important is it that we confront this issue, understand it, and try to get our folk to realize that we need to marry one another. I mean, when I go to churches, I see maybe 7 women to every 1 man. Even if I go to a funeral, there is a significant more women, Black women, than there are Black men, and there has to be something that we work out in our communities to balance this, whether it's polygamy. I don't know. I want to hear what your suggestions are. So who want to jump in first?
Well, I'll jump in real quick and add to your statistics and then hand the space over to other folk. But what you were speaking to is currently the number of non-white children, as they say, not specifically Black, but basically children of color. It currently outnumbers the number of white children. And part of the reason this is the case is because white folk are much older on average. Their median age in this country is about 45, whereas individuals of color, the median age is much lower, almost in the 20s. And so to speak to what you're saying, white people are getting older and not having enough children. And then, of course, children of color are outnumbering white children. And so they're quickly becoming the minority. So I just wanted to speak to your statistic, and then I'll hand the space over.
Yeah. White people are at a 0 birth rate, and it's not just in the United States, it's all over the world. Especially in Europe, where white folks come from. So that's not a new phenomenon. Black people have always been the majority of people. It's only in America that they have us thinking we're in the minority, but Black folks need to look outside of America. Most of the people in Africa, the population projections for Africa is that most of the people, the population in Africa by 2050 will be predominantly people under 18 to 35 demographic. Africa is one of the youngest continents right now, and Africa has more people and land space and resources than Europe and America and the Western, quote unquote, Western countries. So that is an impetus of why we need to return our mind state, and our physical state, back to some connection with Africa. Going back to what you were saying about healing, Brother Joshua is right that we developed some skills from this trauma that we've had. Even though it's traumatic, we have developed some strength we didn't know we had. And now those of us in the diaspora know this white man for who and what he is. And that's a strength for us that perhaps other people may not have. But we need to look to Africa. We need to look to those new things, those new skills that we've acquired to cope, but we also need to go back and fetch some of the healing modalities from our back home. The way the white man teaches psychology and psychotherapy and all that is not suited to African mind, because first of all, most of it is detached from the spiritual connection we are all connected to each other, and we are connected to the great source of life. And so if you're dealing with anything, politics, economics, culture-wise, that does not that detaches itself from the spiritual world, or that which is not seen, from what is seen, what we can see with our own two eyes and hear with our ears and so forth, then you're gonna have problems. The African people have a deep understanding that there's more to life than what we can see and hear with our eyes and ears, and that is the spirit, that is the creator. And so, in going back into that healing, and going back, let me address your question about most of the Black folks that I know are married. Are married to a Black person. Most of my personal close friends have been married for years. Yes, I do have a lot of friends that I grew up with that are not married, that are single mothers and single fathers. But most of the people that I do know that are married to Black people. So I don't think we should necessarily use the church as the best. In the church, as much as we've been able to make use of the church to some degree, more so in the past than nowadays, because we have a lot of scammers nowadays. The church is not a good determinative of what's going on with Black men and Black women, because a lot of those women in the church could be married, but their husbands don't want to go to church. A lot of Black men don't like going to church because of the white Jesus and all the other things that come with it. The hucksters, preachers. I'm not saying that they all are, but there's too many that's in the pulpit. And so a lot of Black men don't want to deal with that. And so they stay home or watch a football game while their wife is in church. So church is not the best determinative of what's going on with Black males and females.
Thank you, Charles. Anybody else want to comment on the topic?
Sorry. I think the comment about turning on the TV and seeing mixed couples rather than Black couples, it's becoming more and more prolific. So there's like a brainwashing going on, and there's always brainwashing with TV. But yes, we are seeing a lot more of mixed families and adverts trying to normalise it. And here in the UK, I think it has been an issue. I mean, I come from a very large family, and out of my immediate family, so my aunts, uncles, even my siblings, I'm the only one who went on to have Black children, and that's really sad because like all my nieces, nephews, cousins are all mixed race, and it's quite common here in the UK. But what I do see is that it's getting better. I think a lot of the things that are happening, probably stateside, I think there's a lot of feedback. I don't know if anyone else can hear it. Very loud. A lot of things that are happening in the States and the problems that you guys are going through is actually uniting us over here. And we have a generation now that realises that we need to go back to keeping it Black, which is beautiful. And these adverts on the TV are not actually now mirroring what's really going on here, because I think as a people we recognise the importance of Black with Black, and it's probably why they're now putting more of these adverts out on TV, because they can see that movement towards a consciousness, towards a want to actually to continue the Black race, because you can't have the Black race without a Black man and a Black woman. You know, you need the Black seed, you need the Black womb to make Black children and continue the race. And if we're outnumbering them now, the only way to stop that is to try and normalise this fetishism of splitting us up and having us doing the swirling or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, there's definitely agenda on the TV, and I think it's a panic. It's a panic thing because we are becoming more conscious about Black relationships. And I don't know if you follow me on social media, I know you do, Brother Clemson, you'll see not a day goes past that I don't post a picture or a photo of a loving Black relationship, because normalizing that picture of a Black woman and a Black man in love is so important, especially with this picture of a Black and a white couple on the media all the time.
I completely agree with that. Because I was going to jump in and say that Charles bringing up the families that he knew, the married couples that he knows is important. I wanted to bring up the same point that a lot of times when we do talk about the friction between Black men and women, we do overlook that we have successful Black relationships happening right now, and that there is an unbroken line of people who never accepted slavery, who maintain their freedom. There's an unbroken line all the way back to before colonialization arrived, right? Unbroken line. There's never gone a second since the time Europeans arrived that there was not at least one African that wasn't with it, right? There's not been a second. And so if you take that in mind, that we have not had people writing our story, we haven't had great promoters, we haven't had great movies and CGI budgets, but that doesn't mean that we're not out here like really doing it, right? And so I think it is important, like Davina just said, to post these things, to when we see it, take it upon ourselves to project our truth, to project our culture, to project our desired truth, to say the truths that we want to see, to not always say, man, Black women and Black men need to get it together. We always fighting each other, because what if I'm the married couple in the audience where you're saying Black men and women never get along, and I'm sitting here with my best friend and love of my life, and I'm like, he don't know what he's talking about. She don't know what she's talking about. Instantly, I'm not hearing you. So it's important to keep in mind our true narratives, that we have never been extinguished, because if we had been, we wouldn't be here now. And so keeping in mind that we should be the basis of our narrative leading out. So we should say, if anything, we should say, we need more of us, or there aren't enough of us. But we got to make sure that we're not discounting the fact that we are here doing this work. We're getting a lot of success. And those are the exact type of things that's not going to show up on the evening news. It's not going to show up trending. It's not going to go viral unless we make it a point to be like, you know what? Let's viralize this, because we don't want to make things go viral anyway. So, I do think it's important.
And we need to make it viral.
Knowing what the issue is and knowing also where we are in our narrative,
Right. Like you said,
to add on to that.
I was just gonna jump on to the. I'm sorry too. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just was gonna step into the programming of the black and white on the regular TV set. We could do our own programming, posting, showing the Black is beautiful. That is something I do believe that we have stepped up on, especially I'm sure everybody in this circle has a social media that is so Black positive. It would just, discuss certain crowds. But I know for me, I don't get a lot of swirling. I don't get a lot of, all my people married to Black people. I understand that they are attempting to make it tempting so that we do start to stray away from our own. But I mean, I feel like there are a good enough amount of us doing a good job at attempting to viralize it, putting it out there. There's enough of us making sure we're getting our foot in the door and saying, hey, I'm Black, I'm beautiful. I love my queen, she's Black, I'm beautiful. Or I love my king, he's Black, he's great. There's plenty of us doing it. And it's just not front page news. So we have those individuals who go out there and say, oh, Black people need to do this, Black people need to do that. And they generalize, they overgeneralize, and they don't actually give the respect to the ones who are doing it. They don't show no, just due to those individuals who are together. And that's all we have to do. Like you stated, we don't have to say nobody's doing it. We could at least say we need more doing it. You know what I mean? That is a better way to look at it. That's the best way to look at it, in my opinion. We need more doing it. No matter how many of us are, we need more. Just keep saying the same thing. We need more. Oh, it's a lot of us doing it. Okay, cool. We need more. It's the best way to go about it.
I think I'll let sister go before me.
Okay.
Yeah, Clemson, I have to jump off. I just want to conclude and leave the space. And I just wanted to say, just with the conversation that we've had, that we have to look beyond sex, love, money, and all these things that we think about when it comes to marriage, particularly, and think about marriage outside of a European context and nation building. I don't think we can build nations if we don't heal these relationships between Black male and Black female. And I hope as y'all continue this conversation that you guys can touch on the very importance of this relationship as it relates to nation building. And I'm sure Darrell will share my contact information in the comments. And so I appreciate this time.
Exactly.
Peace.
I resonate with your sentiment, sister, because I think we need to start talking quality. Because if we're already more, we need to talk about holding each other accountable for the quality of these relationships that we must have. I think, you know, a strong black family doesn't just scare white people, you know, it scares a lot of people, including black people, because it means we would have to be great. We will have to be able to hold ourselves accountable for our um for our healing, for our trauma. We would have to be open enough to work with the partner we are with. We would have to be wise enough to choose healthy, not just partners, but healthy friends, to choose healthy environments for our children to be raised in. It will require us to be not perfect, but it will require us to actually be the people who build kingdoms. Because it's not about, in my opinion, it is, yes, we must get together, but it's the quality of our bond that actually moves mountains. Because more of us can join and create more trauma because we're not healing it, and we think the image is just it, and it's beyond the image. And I think a lot of people are actually jumping ship because they think it's simpler, especially people of color. I think they might think, I don't want to speak for everyone that jumps ship, so I'm going to preface that before I say what I'm about to say. I think some people might be jumping ship because they don't need to build the generational, they think they don't need to build the generational wealth because they believe their part already has that in their bloodline, right? That's kind of what hypergamists kind of go for. They want someone who's a higher stature, but who says that's the answer, right? And this goes for not just women, men do that too. um but being with someone because of um wealth preserving is something I think we don't talk enough about. We assume wealth is just finance, and wealth is beyond that. Wealth can be peace, it can be sustenance, it can be legacy of a storyline of a culture beyond um what society deems as successful. It's about what the individual deems as successful. Um, and that requires us to really sit still and meditate on these topics, and um, learn to remove the things that we desire that has been manufactured into our psyche. But there's this thing that's going on about this concept of love. We forget that that's also been manufactured into our psyche. A lot of the things that we think make us happy are actually chemical reactions that's been manufactured into our psyche via television, via music that has been used to take over our own concepts of because music does a lot for us as a people. I think that's a whole nother conversation. But long story short, we need to look at the quality of what makes these black relationships so powerful. If we are the leaders, we need to prove it beyond just saying melanin. Yes, melanin is important, but what is the quality that makes melanin important? What makes it unquestionable? And it needs tangible results. And that might mean being so strong and firm and still in your culture that no one can move you. And that can speak mountains more. We could have, we can have less, like if we have just the, I really believe it's quality. Quality can speak way a lot of volumes, and that can be what promotes quantity to really um what's the word, matter, because quality can matter, but until quantity can matter, but until quality is leading the way, quality quantity might not actually solve the problem.
Make it
So
worse.
I understand that.
I fully agree. I feel like what Dr. Evangelist was saying about the relationships is exactly what Sister Amma is saying right now. Because I always look at a relationship like what it says it is. It's a ship. It's a ship. So where are you taking the ship? Where are you going? And if you don't set that out at the beginning of a relationship, then you don't really have a relationship. By definition, it's an agreement that you've made. And so if you haven't made agreements together, you do have a relationship, but you don't have the same relationship. You're in one and the other person is one, but if you haven't talked about it and agreed, then you're not in the same relationship. And so I think if people really took time to treat a relationship like it was a technology and like, why am I using this? Like, for what? What do I hope to get out of this? There is a reason. Where am I trying to go? What do I need to put into it to make it work? Right? It's not just like, all right, now that I got it, it's on autopilot forever. It'll feed itself. It'll wash itself. You know what I mean? If you treat it like it's a technology that you have to invest in, that you got to update it, that you got to make sure that you're good, then I do believe it will give us a fresher way to approach it, such that we're mindful, that we're present in the relationships. Because like the sister was saying, we've been programmed to chemically respond to things. We've been bonded to things from childhood that have nothing to do with our reality and our culture, but it's been chemically bonded into us. And so in order to deal with that, we need to bond ourselves and our children to nature again. Like the same way that if you have a child and they are in love with some kind of princess from cartoons, and you get them a whole birthday setup, right? The cake, the balloons, the costume, the cutlery, the songs, the videos, everybody's repping this one character, this one movie. You're bonding them. And especially the happier and greater of a time they have, they will forever remember that character associated with that feeling, with that attention, with those games, that love, and all the biochemical things that are happening will be bonded with that image. So you could do the same thing with young people and have a Queen and Zinga party instead of a princess imaginary party. You can have a Queen Ya Asante party, Queen Harriet Tubman party, Marie La Martiniere party if you got a little girl, you know what I mean? Or have an Ogun party, a Dessalines party, a Nat Turner party,
and a J. Cooper,
right? And have a whole and make sure that they understand what they're bonding to. It's not just we gonna say the name. See, a lot of times when we do in our history, we make it boring as hell. We feel like just because they should know it, us saying it means they're gonna be like, "Thank you for telling me what I should know." That's not how it works with children. And that's why Disney don't just sit there and put no speech. They make it colorful and fun and songs and dance and jokes. If you're not doing that for your children, you're not actually trying to bond them to the culture that you want them to grow. You can't torture and mean it into them. Because that's not our culture. That's the European culture to torture a culture into. We can't use that. It's going to backfire and make our children like, I ain't with you. Because you know from the inside we ain't supposed to do that. So why are you doing that? That must mean you ain't figured it out, so I'm off you. So we need to make sure that when we're working with our children, we are bonding them to our culture with love, with fun. Take them out and celebrate and have a great time on Nat Turner's birthday if you want them to care, on George Washington Carver's birthday if you want them to care. You know, you got to get them posters. You got to sing songs, make up imaginary stories. You know what I mean? Just to get their imagination going. That's how you make children pick it up, because all of our relationship ideas are set in our childhood, and you can definitely try to repair and change later, but you're bonded biochemically. It's built into your body, your neural pathways. So it takes a lot more work to change it than it does to build it. You know, so
I would like to add something to what you're saying. Just add a little spice to that. I think, imagine if they had rites of passages. I don't even think it takes more. I think it takes like pivots, right? Pivot movements. And when I say that, I mean people want something that means something to them, right? And parties are like, we get to redefine what party means to us. Just party mean drinking all the time. You know what I'm saying? Because kids watch us. So if, as adults, we're saying partying means these type of things, that's what they're going to gear towards as they get older. But if we start to say, today's the Earth's birthday, Sunday, if people even want to praise the Lord, what did the Lord create? The earth. So Sundays we go out in nature. Like if we start really creating the substance to the the things we're celebrating. Like today's your 15th birthday. It's time you learn this. Like create little, really promote our cultural private moments to the point that they even feel like they got a secret they can't tell everybody because their culture is a gem that can't just be out here. Promote being put in front of a camera for attention, because that's what's happening right now. A lot of what's happening is, um, it's a lot happening, and I could get really I kind of don't want to get into those exactly just yet, but that we need to bring cultural privacy back so that kids can feel like there's something to preserve. And it might not require us hyper, like I do hear what you're saying. And I'm not going against what you're saying. It might seem like that's what I'm doing. So let me rephrase what I'm saying. I think that if we celebrate the greats and the reason and why they're great, away from the way Western culture celebrates things, it might give these kids more connection to the holidays, because they'll know that they have something special, something unlike anything else, something unlike what people out here are celebrating. And it can start to feel like a gem in their memory that they would want to share with their kids. And then also they might want to start having bonding moments with family rather than with social media, because they will realize there's an importance and treasure to not throwing everything that's important to you in front of the camera for likes, for to be liked because you need a job these days, to be an influencer, and it's all that, you know what I'm saying? They wouldn't have to sell themselves because they'll start to realize how much of a treasure they are and how much they don't need to sell themselves. And guess what's gonna how that's gonna help the dynamic between the two, the male and female. The female will start to really hold herself to a certain regard, and then the male will realize, dang, if I really want her, I'm gonna have to hold myself to a certain high regard. And so now this, craving to be with one another starts to produce itself, because we're creating a world outside of Western ways of being. Because it's so long as we do that, they reign. You know what I'm saying? And if people want the best, they're going to go for them, because what are we perpetuating as our standard? Theirs. So if we start doing a standard that's ours, that looks different, but not just different, but has a substance to it, that's, I think I've spoke on it a lot. I think you kind of get where I'm going with that. But yeah.
And for the record, I did not think you were contradicting me. I thought you were filling in the blanks and the supports of exactly what I was saying. So.
Right. Yes, I'm glad you noticed that. Sometimes I feel like I have to kind of like,
Yeah, because we'd all have to talk for hours and hours and hours to fill in everything that we know and consider and think when we make the statements that we make. So yeah, it's good that we can fill in the gaps with each other and for each other. That's the whole point of the community,
Alma, I want to ask you a question, because you are Ghanaian and from Africa, and I spent a lot of time in Ghana. And we have so many brothers that are in the prisons. I mean, when I talked about when I go places, I see maybe 7 women to every man. And women have to be nourished. They need companionship. They need all the dimensions of love and etc. Now in Africa, they had polygamy, but polygamy, as I observed it, was not as so many people look at polygamy as having a lot of women that you can have sex with or that kind of stuff. It was more of a family in which everybody had a role to play. I mean, one man may have had 3 wives or so forth, but all of those women had different roles. One may have cooked, and so forth, and made sure that was a focus, and they did it. But they all worked together and they had obligations that they all did, but they were all sisters together, and they enjoyed each other. I was around polygamous relationships, and I very seldom seen women fighting or arguing, and I saw them more acting like a family. And the brother had a role, um, and his role was more or less to take care of everybody. But if you would speak on that, since that's a part of your heritage as an African woman.
Okay, I will speak on that, and I would prime what I'm saying with the fact
Now, let
that
me say this also. I
okay,
also noticed that most women today don't didn't uh, get involved in polygamous relationship. That was something that they accepted in the past,
mhm.
but most women today wanted one man, one woman. Okay, I'm sorry for cutting you off. I just wanted to throw that in there.
No, it's cool. Like I said, I'm gonna prime what I'm saying with the fact that I'm still studying, right, and I'm still weaving things together, and so I'm gonna give you guys a map of my brain, which is a connection to my experience and what I've been reading, and putting that together to my logic. So it's fascinating because what I'm noticing is this hypersexualization of polygamy. It's hypersexualized, and people can't see beyond it than bodies, right? So that's one point I wanted to make. One thing that I've noticed. Then I go into how I've noticed it in um, African readings and my experience with it. Even Africans don't really, the ones that I experience. I'm from like the Ashanti tribe of the Akan group, right? So one thing I want to say is Akan is not just one group of people. What makes Akan so powerful is that Kan in Akan represents first pioneers, right? So there's so many different tribes within the concept of Akan. But what makes Akan powerful is the fact that there was like this unified concept of like working together, although there are different tribes that exist, right? And so they're woven together through different communications, adinkra, ideograms and stuff like that. They can communicate, although each culture holds its own different values. I say that to say that most of what I've observed with African cultures and polygamy is the fact that it's been a way to secure family dynamics. So if um, a person's husband died, right? They would say that his brother must take care of his wife, the widow. This does not mean they're sexually together. I don't that's that part I don't know. But that story is more so to protect the children that are from that family line, right? I'm not saying I don't think, I don't know. I'm just observing how the different dynamics were created to preserve the safety of community so that the woman didn't have to be by herself and raise a child by herself, because we know the proverb, it takes a family to raise a village, it takes a community to raise a village. Okay. So with that being said, also with the concept that each tribe has their own concept of um the unit of marriage that's beyond just two people, right? Because of the hypersexualization of polygamy, people can't see it existing in any other structure beyond that, and how they are going to get satisfied or all of this stuff. And it's interesting because I have a book right here, and there's an Adinkra simple that says polygamy is not good because it promotes poverty, because how can you sustain many wives? Right? And that more wives can mean more arguments. That's what some of them are saying. Not to say that's true, but there's different each tribe has different ideas on even the topic of polygamy. So I feel like polygamy has always been a questionable topic beyond just in the day and age that we're in. And even Africans themselves grapple with, what does polygamy mean? And as you know, there's certain families that are Islamic, and so they have their own definition of how polygamy works in their family line. So I think we are just beginning to even talk about polygamy. And though it is a way of some Africans, there are some Africans who also grapple with that term. And with that being said, I'd like to broaden my answer up to kind of bring a connectivity to Africans and Africans in the continent and out of the continent. Our experiences are not so far apart. It's not so far apart. When we say African is Black Americans, I want a lot of them to realize that those same things that we question, Africans do too. And even if people say that this is an African topic, it's still hard for even Africans to embed into their culture. In this day and age. So any advancements in that topic that we make here on whichever continent we are as African people, right, can make headway even when we go into Africa. And so I don't know if that really answered your question. I do think that so now my opinion on polygamy is that I think more people should do readings and study and get more literature around the topic before just doing it because they feel like it. Because when you do that because you feel like it, you're working off of a desire that might be ego driven rather than what is it called? Rather than trying to build something inside yourself, because it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot. I think it can be a little bit more lonely in some ways because you're gonna have to hold yourself accountable for listening to other people that you know might not completely agree with, but you want to be united with. And depending on why you're doing it, maybe because you want a doctor in your home and a teacher in your home and someone who constructs in your home, you're all gonna have to be working and you're all gonna have to be able to play your part. And to play your part, you got to go inward and do the work done so you can come outside to present and commune with one another. So it's a different way of thinking that I'm glad that people are talking about it now, but I think it's not one to punish one another for not doing it because it's the African way. Because Africans are still also grappling with the topic in the continent. So Africans outside the continent would do the same thing because we are reflections of one another.
Thank you so much. We are coming down to the end of our program, so I want to give everybody a chance to have a last minute comment. And since Brother Charles, you're here, would you give us your commentary last moment?
Yeah. So I just want to touch on a couple of things before we end. First, let's deal with the polygamy. In the Muslim tradition, as the sister was saying, the Muslim has a slightly different, but it's the same layout. With the Muslims were going through several wars, and because the men weren't returning home, their brothers took on the responsibilities of the brother's spouse. And so that's one of the ways that polygamy started expanding in Africa. But the continent is not monolithic. There's different traditions, as the sister said. And but in saying that, see, a lot of us, as you were talking about, titillated by the idea of having many women that we could have sexual pleasure with at our leisure, and it didn't work like that. First, you had responsibility to economically provide for that woman. And in our Khan tradition and other traditions of West Africa outside of the Muslim tradition, you have each woman and has to have her own space. So that's why a lot of places have compounds, and each wife will have her own space within the compound. Each wife will have her roles within the compound, but the man also had his role within the compound of what he was supposed to do, and not necessarily leader as we think of leaders, but there's complementarity. And that's one of the things that I wanted to say from earlier, It's not necessarily that the man leads, but there's a complementary relationship between the men and the women. Because in some instances, women lead, but the man is the defender of his family. The men are the defenders of their families in the community, and that's where they lead. But women have leadership roles too in the Akana, the Shanti tradition. When they're choosing the king is chosen from a group of people that in line to become the next king. But the leadership role comes through the woman's the matrilineal line, through the mother's line in the royal families. It doesn't come through the man like how in Europe King George dies and King George II takes over. No, it doesn't come through his family. It comes through the female family. So there's a complementary understanding of what male roles and female roles are and how we interact and build with each other. One of the things I wanted to say is a lot of times people think of relationships and they think of the quote unquote romantic relationships, but that's not the only relationship there are. There's the relationship I have with my sister, I have with my brother, I have with my family and my community. See, a lot of us are trying to just think about couples relationships, but we don't examine the relationships that we have with the other people that are around us. Like I had a girlfriend years ago, and she admired the relationship, how my family was very close, but she didn't really have that in her family. Her father was abusive towards her mother, and then it was just like chaos with the family. And so as much as she wanted to be close with her family and become close to my family, because she could not she had no preparation to deal with that level of closeness and love in the family, I couldn't build with her. And we have a lot of our people that they're trying to build a relationship with somebody in a romantic way, but they don't even have a relationship with their family and with their family. You know what I'm saying? So, and the part of the healing process that we need to do, if we're going to talk about building a husband, becoming husband and wives, we have to work on self first in our relationship with the creator and the ancestors and so forth, because that is truly the African way. It doesn't start outside, it doesn't start outside with the outside influences. It starts with the inside, and the creator is inside each of us. The ancestors are inside each of us. And so we start with them, calling on them and asking them to help us. Which way should we go? What rituals should we use? How should we communicate to each other? And then deal with that in relationship to yourself. Ancestor, help me to change the things about myself, to open myself up to love, open myself up to all the abundance that you have for me, because the creator and the ancestors have plenty for you, and nobody else can have what you can have. Now, see the white perspective is that competition is coming out of the ice, where we had to fight for the limited resources. But everything that is yours, nobody else can have it but you. And so once you start to deal with that and stop trying to compete with your brother, stop trying to compete with your sister, stop trying to compete with your spouse or your girlfriend, your boyfriend, then you can open yourself up to all the blessings that life has up for you. So you start with the creator, your ancestors, work with them, talk with them, light a candle for them, say some prayers, work on yourself, then work on your family relationships. Can you heal what is going on between you and your mother? Can you heal for the sisters that were blamed by their mothers, as I said earlier, for those men molesting them? Can you heal that relationship? Maybe you could talk to your mother and find out that she too was abused or in some type of way, maybe not that exact way. Can you heal that relationship with your father? A lot of our sisters can't have healthy relationships with men because they don't have healthy relationships with their fathers. And our mothers and our fathers model for us what type of a relationship that we could have. So if for a boy to look at his mother, if your mother is modeling healthy female behavior and something that you would look up to, boys are going to model the type of woman that they want from what they see in their mother, what they see in their sisters and their aunties and their grandmothers. And sisters are going to model the same thing in their fathers. And unfortunately, a lot of the fathers out here are modeling negative behavior. And so that's what our sisters see as what they want or aspire in a man. So we have to change that dynamic. We have to create the family healing before we even deal with I'm gonna get with you. We're gonna have a family. And those of us that do have families, though, you have to figure it out. You have to do all of that while you're still in this relationship, especially if you have kids. Um, we cannot let our kids fall victim to the same things that we fall victim to. So we got to figure out how we're gonna work it out. The therapy, some rituals. We got to do some calling on the ancestors. We got to do something to provide something better for our children, right? Because the children in the future is what it's all about. It's not about romance. It's not about sex. It's not about these false values like Kevin Samuels and other folks are talking about high value men and women. We need to teach our children about character and what character means. Character is going to help us to develop into what we should be, race men and women, building for African people. Character is going to say, okay, that brother made money, but he made money out on the streets, poisoning our people. Is that what I want my children to learn? Or would I rather I be with a brother that he may not have a lot of money, but it's obvious that he loves his people. It's obvious that sister loves her people, right? If she's not misusing her people to make $1 million. We have to teach our children values so that they can discern from all this propaganda that's on the TV, that's telling them to exploit women, not just black women, all women. That's telling them that to shoot their brother down in the street for stepping on, the nonsense, stepping on the sneakers or talking about your name or something, or course he's from this hood or that hood. There's a lot of brothers in the gangs as cousins that's killing each other because one have a different color versus the other. But we have to stop that mess. That's not our values. That's not our values. That's values that we had to develop because of the trauma. But now we're imposing the trauma upon ourselves, and it's time to stop so that we could build towards that nation or those nations that we're talking about building.
Thank you, Brother Charles. I've been calling you I'm Always Black, but this is Antonio. So, Antonio, give us your closing words.
Yes, sir, no problem. I really like to speak to the balancing act that we spoke on. That is definitely a strong action that we must learn to start learning how to actually balance. We must learn how to pull off that act. We must understand that, as Josh said, a plug goes into a socket, not a plug in a plug or a socket in a socket. There's always a plus and a minus. There's always, as the Africans would say, the feminine, which would lie in the magneticism, the masculine, which will lie in the electricity. These things are, things of the earth that have that balance. We have to learn. You can't have electricity without magneticism. You can't have magneticism without the other. You can't have a man without a woman, vice versa. It just goes on. We don't pay attention to the actual specifics of how to balance. What is balance? A lot of us don't understand our roles within our relationships. We get into a relationship, and again, as Josh stated, we don't know where it's going, or I have my idea of what a relationship is. She has a whole nother. We're not as open as we need to be with each other in terms of understanding what we really want to do. We get into that mindset of a Jay-Z, Beyonce, some of us type of power couple, and that's what we see, that's what we want. But that's not our culture. That's not necessarily something we should strive for. That's what we see on TV. That's what we were taught. That's what we were programmed. And we should learn to step into our own goals, our own values, what is truly valuable to us as a people, also as this relationship, as raising our children, as building our community, preserving our wealth, whatever it is we see as wealth. So all these things are definitely extreme. And again, it all boils down to that balancing act. How well can you do it? How much have you really truly learned so that you know what steps to take, what roads to go, how to travel those roads, how to sell those seeds. things of that nature. And that's where I would leave it, man. We have to be able to work in the same, pod together without it's a lot. It's a lot. This is a heavy topic, but I do understand that balance. So I'm gonna leave it there.
Yes. One of the things, Sister Davina, you're in England, so I want our public to know that you're coming to us from England.
Mm-hmm.
Your last comments, please.
I'd just like to touch on something that Sister Amma said about the quality of Black relationships as well. And I totally agree. It's not just about the quantity, but I do also think that we should be striving to build generational wealth. So I think wealth is an important factor and it is a goal, because we want to build these communities, build these nations, and it does take wealth and power. So not only should we be educating our children about what it means to spiritually be Black, but we should also be learning about and passing down information about building that wealth so that we can take back our power. So I don't think we should discount wealth when we talk about Black relationships either. It shouldn't be a commercial goal, like you say, the Jay-Z's and the Beyoncé's, but it's important that we learn that and we pass that on to our kids, because that's what other races are doing and what we're missing out on. So that's just my last addition that I need to add.
Thank you so much. Brother Joshua, you want to take us home?
We already home, brother. We live on earth. That's home for us. Well, yeah, I want to co-sign on that quality part, that being what is the most important about our relationships and our numbers growing. If we got a whole bunch of trash, that's not an improvement by any means. So we definitely want the quality. And I think that in order for us to really know what quality is, since we're raised in a culture that makes us not be able to easily identify what is our natural, then I think to do some reflection work with your partner, if you're with somebody, if you're in a relationship. We don't do romantic, we do Africantic, just for those that still want to use that language. We don't bring Rome into our relationships, y'all. So if you want to talk that kind of language, we're gonna say Africantic at least, right? But when we have in the Africantic relationships or in our family or community relationships, the quality comes from you trusting you, right? And you being your best and showing up as your best self, not as you telling somebody else what to do or telling somebody else what's wrong with them. The best thing that we can get out of a relationship is the reflection of us. If we have a problem with somebody, that is our reflection. That is not them. That is us as a collective. And so it gives us a point to look at ourselves and be vulnerable with ourselves and acknowledge, you know what? I can tune that up. And that's how we need to enter our relationships as, real places for us to see ourselves and fine tune ourselves, with the spirit of love being the end goal. That's the end goal. Every single time of every relationship, if you make love the end goal, then that will allow you to navigate the rough parts where we are clashing against each other. It'll allow you to navigate it to say, okay, let me pause, let me breathe, let me pull back. Because right now, the way we're doing it is chaotic, it's toxic, and that's the thing we're trying to fix. So let's pause and look at that, and get to the side of it, and then I'll meet you over there, and then we can look at this problem we was just dealing with together, because love is the end goal. So, if we can get into that, and on my outro, stop the self-betrayals. If you don't trust yourself, you can't trust another person, and you can't be trusting. You can't be trusted. So you have to not betray yourself. You have to have integrity so that you trust yourself, because you're not going to trust yourself with a good partner if you know you're a violator. So you're going to be mentally projecting things onto them that they ain't doing because you don't trust. So integrity is the starting point for a good relationship. You have to come into it knowing that you are bringing your best, not cheating. You ain't lie to get your way in there. You ain't borrow somebody else's poetry or somebody else's voice. You showed up in full, and that's what attracted them. Then you know you're supposed to be together. But if you cheated to get them, they're not with you. They're with the fantasy you sold them. And that's what we need to understand, because at some point the fantasy bubble pops and they're like, wait, it's you? And you're like, oh, you caught me. And then it's problems. Nobody wants to get caught. So, stop all the problems and come with integrity. Be yourself, show up in truth, And it's going to hurt because they've taught us our value is in lying about who we are. But truth, our value is in being true to ourselves with all of our pain, because those are like our badges of honor, man. That's showing that we survivors. Don't be ashamed of the pain we've been through. You know, it shows our strength levels, you know. So I'm out. Thank y'all. Y'all been blessing me all night. I appreciate it.
I want to thank everybody, all of our participants. It was, I think, a great program. Your insight is powerful and it has lifted us up as a people. But I want you to send everybody you know a link to the program and get everybody to join with us. You know, what do you do? Darrell, what is it? They click on the like button and join us, but share the link with your friends and family, because I think these dialogues are critical for strengthening us. They have power. These words have life. You know, good friend of mine, Mama Moshe, said to me, truth changes things, but truth itself never changes. So I'll leave you with that. Truth may be squashed, but it will always rise. Thank you and good night.
Peace.
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 Blessings.
Peace.
All right, kings, queens. Y'all have an amazing night.
Likewise.
All right, you too, brother. It's good building.